For this first video for today, no opening. You're not going to get the classic opening for podcasts now. I'm pretty mad. And really, I'm mad at one specific studio closure that Xbox has just performed. And we'll talk about all of them. We'll talk about the news, but I am royally ticked off that Tango Gameworks is one of the 4 that has actually been shut down. And I mean, if you're new to the channel, you might not know my absolute love for the game behind me, Hi-Fi Rush. Hi-Fi Rush is one of the better games I think released in the last, and I genuinely believe this as we go further, like in time, as time continues to progress. I think we're going to look back, or at least I'm going to look back specifically, and I'm going to say, yeah, you know, in maybe like a 5 to 7 year stretch, Hi-Fi Rush was a top 10 game, a new IP, an original thing, and honestly, a really original thing. The visuals were spectacular. That cel-shaded stuff always gets me, but the story of this game was freaking phenomenal. I actually can't believe how good it was. The characters, ranging from Chai to everybody else on the cast, unbelievably good. And then the gameplay, doing a rhythm game, but doing it as like an action-y, almost like beat 'em up, but you got skills and abilities. This is one of the most unique and also just one of the best games, again, of the last however many years you want to say. And it was one of my personal favorites the year it released. I am beside myself that they shut this freaking studio down. And you know what? It's not even just Hi-Fi Rush. You have Ghostwire Tokyo, which I actually thought was under the radar good. I got a review code for it back in the day. I got to play like the first couple chapters, and then I got to play the whole game. And, you know, it got like 70s, mid-70s, or it got like middling scores. I'm not going to sit here and say that's the greatest game ever made. But you know what? That game was kind of cool. I liked the gameplay. I liked the story. I liked the open world. I think I liked it more than, you know, the overall reviews. And then, of course, you have The Evil Within, a really different, interesting franchise that, by the way, doesn't really stand a good chance of finishing the trilogy. You got Evil Within 1, Evil Within 2. You're probably not going to get 3 unless they throw it somewhere, you know, somewhere else in Bethesda. So what is the actual news of today? Well, this is what we all got to wake up with. Microsoft has closed down multiple Bethesda studios, including Arcane Austin, who made Redfall, Tango Gameworks, Evil Within, Ghostwire Tokyo, Alpha Dog Studios, and Roundhouse Studios. Now, I'm not going to sit here and tell you that I know too much about those last 2. I know one of them was doing like a mobile game. I honestly, like, again, I'm going to kind of not speak to it other than to say, and this probably stands, I would imagine, for all of them. I'm sorry. Like, I feel bad, and I really hope the people that, you know, worked at these studios, you know, you don't want to see people laid off. We have talked about, like, okay, in certain instances, like if you almost do it to yourself, what do you expect the higher-ups to do? And we might talk about that with Arcane Austin, but like, I wish these people the best of luck, and I hope that they find jobs. Specifically, may I just throw out the people at Tango Gameworks, because I think they are the most talented of that bunch. But regardless, number one, you know, if we're not just only talking about my love for Hi-Fi Rush, this is a big move. Like, what the heck happened? Like, truly, what happened? They already laid off. Didn't Microsoft do like a 1900? No, okay, I actually have to separate them. Microsoft did their whole layoff thing of like whatever it was, like 10,000 or whatever a few years back. And then Xbox did their thing of what, like 1,900 people. From my understanding, at least surface level, this wasn't part of the 1,900, so this was separate. So they laid off 1,900 individuals when they absorbed, you know, Activision. And then they're doing this too. So what is this? An extra, I don't know, like maybe 200 to 400 people that they're laying off? What? Well, like, I don't know. I guess, like, and this is like where my mind went immediately. Okay, well, like, what did these studios do? Now, okay, well, one of them you can kind of get it. And that is like a trickier thing. I don't want to be afraid to speak my mind, and so I'm not going to be afraid in this video. In terms of Redfall, what do you want them to do? You know, Redfall was a complete disaster. Now, I played it for like 2 days. I wouldn't say it was the worst game I've ever played in my life, but I don't really think I played it all the way through to declare it the worst game I've ever played in my life. I actually played it with a community member, and we had an okay amount of fun playing it together. So, you know, I'm not going to sit here and say that game was good. That game was bad. And I don't know what severity of bad it was, but it was bad. I also know, as we talked about, okay, well, what happened with Redfall? Well, much of that extremely talented team is not there. You know, the team that made Prey, and then they, you know, they made Prey, and then they went on to make Redfall, right? 70% of those people were not at the studio when Redfall launched. So they were a shell of their former selves. To call them like the most talented team, or, oh, how could this have happened to Redfall? Everybody there worked on Prey. No, only 30% worked on Prey, 70% did not. And you can tell. So again, I wish them the best. Like, they're not evil people. I just don't think they worked, whether it was talent level, whether it was people telling them from up top of what to do with Redfall. But I don't know. It always seemed to me from like interviews and stuff like they kind of wanted it. I don't know. I'll kind of leave it there because we don't ultimately know what happened. But I will say in that situation, it could have been higher ups that screwed them over, absolutely. And this would be another example of like executives telling them what to do, them failing at it, and then them taking all of the responsibility and being fired, right? And that's not really cool, but that happens all the time in the gaming industry. Or it could be that they did this all to themselves, and like, again, what else do you want them to do? So that one is harder to like argue, oh, well, why don't you let them stick around and either redeem themselves or make a new game? It could just be that game lost so much money. They have no trust in the studio. Like that one, I kind of understand. Now, if they're going to, I think some people from that team are actually going to move to other studios. That's cool. You know, absorb them, see if you can get them working on a better project that suits, you know, what they're good at or whatever. I think that's okay. You know what I mean? Then you have Tango Gameworks. We already talked about it. Terrible. Absolutely goddamn terrible. And then the other two, again, don't know too much info about it, but let me just circle back to Hi-Fi Rush to end this video. One of the coolest new IPs, and I've been seeing people say this online, which I'm glad. Like, I'm glad that this kind of sentiment is out there. Like, this is another example of just burning goodwill. You know, whether it's Xbox, whether PlayStation does this, say with a Helldivers 2 situation or stuff. You know, why can't we ever just have good things and have good things consistently? I guess good things, you know, they always come to an end. But, you know what I mean? Like, we had something good here. And I know, like, Shinji Mikami, like, he left, right? So I do think that probably, and I've actually told people on Twitter this, I imagine that had something to do with it, right? Because he was at least the heart, the core of Evil Within. He was already on his way out. Hi-Fi Rush was like a different group altogether. So it's like, is it because of him? Like, is it because he left and they just don't see the need to continue the studio? I mean, I would imagine it has to be sales. It has to be sales with Tango, right? Because Hi-Fi Rush, we never really got. I mean, I honestly don't remember. Maybe they said like 1 million or 2 way back when it came out, but we've never gotten any data in the last, say, like year plus for Hi-Fi Rush. Like, that game could have sold next to nothing, at least after the original stuff, or it could have sold like 5-10 million. We wouldn't know because they haven't said. I imagine, though, it was very low, and I imagine that is why they picked it to do the PlayStation thing, right? To try to like put it on other consoles. They chose that because who's buying it? Nobody. So why not just try it on other systems? Ghostwire Tokyo, also from my knowledge or understanding, like that didn't sell well either. So like that didn't blow up. So, you know, it could be because of that. Evil Within always sold like fine. I don't think Evil Within ever sold unbelievable. I don't know, like Tango Gameworks to Xbox to me was like Media Molecule to PlayStation, which is also in trouble and also might get shut down in the next like 5 years. We don't know. They kind of go against the grain of what you imagine these big AAA studios from these big AAA kind of corporations, right? When you think of Microsoft, when you think of Sony, now at least, right? Maybe not back, like PS3 era I always talk about, like PlayStation was just firing and they were just letting people do whatever the heck they wanted. And that is what I think Media Molecule still represents, doing just weird things that don't really catch on and maybe they don't really need to. This for Xbox is the same thing. They make the Evil Within. Well, who in God's name would pitch the Evil Within other than them? Who would do Hi-Fi Rush that's in the Xbox ecosystem other than them? Xbox has a few things here and there, but like this was the team, at least the team with like notoriety, like people knew them. You know what I mean? And it just sucks. I don't know. I'm actually at a loss for words. It was one of my favorite games, and so I guess it hurts more. There's a biasness there, but the goodwill, like I said, to finish up on that, like you had something, and you don't always need the sales like for it to sell like 10 million units. And I know that's easier for me to say than them because they're the ones who need to make money. But this is what I personally talk about all the time. I think there needs to be these teams out there. I think there needs to be these games out there that just do something different, innovate, like just literally give us a different kind of product against the norm. And yeah, they might not sell, but I want these companies to be set up in the way where maybe you can have one or two teams that are kind of just creative and just do their, you know what I mean? Why? And I guess, like, why can't you do it? Well, they need to make money. So I do understand the opposite side of things, but I don't know. It's a sad day. It really is. And also, just where in God's name did this come from? Like, nobody heard about this. This was uncalled for. So let me know what you guys think in the comments. Make sure, as always, you're subscribed to the channel, bell icon turned on. I hope to see you all on the next one.